Hey guys, welcome back to a new video, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can create a basic inventory system inside Unreal Engine. Here you can see I can pick up these items and they are getting stored in my inventory. Now since these items are with me, I can drag out each of these items out of my inventory, and you can also see how this UI is getting dragged out with the mouse cursor, and these items are getting placed into the world again. Now you can also pick up these items again into your inventory and so on. And if you want to download this project and get all the assets I'm using in this video, then you can get this project from my Patreon. The link is in the description. So before we continue, first let me show you that I'm going to use some assets like this camera model, this drink can, guns, and this lockpick. I'm going to use them as items that are going to be picked up by the player into the inventory. You can also use your own items. So now let's right click and create a blueprint class of vector type. I'm going to name this item BP, open this up, and let's add a static mesh component. Let's name this item, and then let's add another component that is box collision. Let's name this interactive box, and let's drag this under the item. Now this collision box will help us to interact with the item so that we can pick it up when our player is inside this box. So just resize it accordingly, and you can also select your item mesh to take an idea for this interactive box size. I think the size is fine, so let's remove the mesh. Now we are going to use this item BP as a base blueprint class, and we are going to create multiple child blueprint of it for all of our different items that we have. Now to create child blueprint of it, right click and down here search for the item BP. Select and click OK. Let's name this camera item. Now just make copies of this blueprint for each of your item and name them accordingly. Now open one of them, and you can see here these components are inherited from the item BP. So now we just need to select item mesh inside every item blueprint. So after you selected the mesh for each of your item blueprint, now we are going to create a structure. The structure is going to carry the details about each item itself, so that when we will pick up any item, we can retrieve the details about that item. So I'm going to name this item struct. Now open it up. So the first variable is going to be a string, which is going to be the name of item. Now let's add another variable, and this one is going to be a texture 2D, which is going to be the UI image of that item so that we can place it into the inventory. After that, open your item BP, which is the base class for all of your item, and here add a variable. Let's name this item details, and in the variable type, search for the item struct that we just made. Now, since this item BP is the parent of all these other blueprints, you can see here in the detail panel, you have access to the item detail variable in all of the child blueprint of the item BP. So we just need to fill the name of the corresponding item and select the UI image of the item that you want to show in the inventory. Now here I have my own UI images that I'm going to use, but you can use your own images. Now you have to do the same for all the other item blueprints. So now we are finally done with setting up the item blueprint, and now we can move on to set up our inventory UI. So right click, click on user interface, widget blueprint, and user widget. Let's name this inventory button UI. Now here add a canvas panel, and from the top right, select custom, give it the size that you want for each slot in your inventory. I'm going with 100. Now get a button into the canvas. Let's also give it the size of 100 and set the anchor to center. And here we are going to use an image. Here you can see this is the image I'm going to use for the slot. So just select it here and then copy the image and paste them in the hovered and the pressed state. I'm going to rename this button to slot button. Now let's also add the image under the button, and let's name this item image. Now let's add a border to the canvas, set its anchor to the center, and resize it a little smaller and just keep it on the bottom right corner. Then you can also change its color, and after that let's add a text under this border. Rename the text to quantity, as this text is going to show the quantity of the item we have stored in the inventory. Then just resize it and set it to center. Then you can try some text to see if it's fitting the border, and I think it's fitting quite well. So let's set its default text to 0. Now, the last thing we have to do here is to set the image default visibility to hidden, and also same for the border. We will only make it visible when there is an item in the slot. Then go to its graph, and here let's create a variable, call this slot number and variable type to integer. So every slot is going to have its slot number, which we are going to use later on when we will drop the item. So let's just keep this variable here. So now let's create another user widget and call this inventory UI, and this is where all the slot is going to be together. So here as usual at the canvas panel, then add a vertical box, then give it the size of x 1000 and y 500. Set the anchor to center and this vertical box too. Now get the overlay and drag it under the vertical box and then set the size to filled. Then get the background blur, drag it under the overlay and let's give it the blur strength of 2 and also fill it. You can design your inventory according to yourself, but I am just giving you an idea. So then get the border and drag it under the overlay and also fill it. Then you can give it some color. I am just going to give it a little bit of dark color with some transparency. Then get a wrap box under the border and set its adjustment at the center. Now in the palette, you have to go to the user created and you have to drag this inventory button UI inside the wrap box, since these are going to be the slots in our inventory. Now let's add some paddings for better alignment. But we can do the same thing from the wrap box from here. And I prefer doing it from the wrap box instead of the padding, but for me it's more convenient. Now you just need to duplicate these slots according to how much you need in your inventory. So now we are done with setting up the inventory UI. Now let's come over to the graph and here we need to create a function. Let's name this getSlotAtIndex and make sure it's a pure function, and here we need to add an input parameter. Variable type is going to be integer and name it index. I'll explain to you what this function is for, but before get a return node and then search for make array. And connect your very first inventory button slot to the make array node. After that, add multiple pins to this make array node till how much slot you have in your inventory, and then connect them in their corresponding pins in order. So once you are done, search for get a copy node through this array and connect the index parameter to it and connect this pin to the return node. And here you can change the output name to slot. Now what this function is doing is, when you give this function an index number, it gives you the inventory slot reference based on the index number you have given. So if you wanna get reference of a specific inventory slot, you can give index like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It will just return you the slot reference based on the index you given. And yeah, we are going to use this function later on when we'll write the logic for the inventory system. Now let's create one more structure for the inventory slot. Let's name this inventory struct. Now why is this structure for? Now every slot in the inventory will carry some details about the item it's holding, like item's name, image, quantity and all. So later on when we'll drop the item out of the inventory, we will know what specific item that is and how much we have still left. So the first one is going to be the string, which is the name of the item. The second one is going to be the integer, which is going to be the quantity of the item we have in the slot. Now the another one is going to be a boolean, which will tell us if the slot is empty or not. Then the next one is the texture 2D, which is the image UI of the item. And the last one is going to be the class reference of our item BP. Let's name this class. Now we need to go to our character blueprint and here search for event begin play. So we are going to create this widget as soon as our player spawns in the world. So create widget and select inventory UI and right click and promote this to variable. Let's name this inventory UI and then add it to the viewport. But we don't want to show it at the event begin play, so let's just hide it for now. So get the set visibility node and set it to hidden. So the inventory UI is there in the memory but just hidden to be shown up later on. So now let's create a variable and let's name this inventory slots. And from the variable type, search for the inventory struct. It's the same structure that we made for our inventory slot. And that variable contains many different details about the inventory slot, like item's quantity, its UI image, the slot is empty or not, and other stuff. And we have like 15 slots in our inventory. So we are just going to make this variable an array. And here you can add the elements till the number of slots you have in your inventory. In my case, it's 15. So now let's get the E key and let's say when we press it, we wanna show our inventory UI. But instead of using just this, you can set up your inputs in a better way, like using input action mapping. But I'm going to use this just for the sake of tutorial. But before this, let's first place the items into the level. Alright, so after that, we can come back to our character blueprint. So here let's create a custom event and call this fill slot. And here add an input parameter, search for item BP, and after selecting it, you can call this item reference. So we'll call this custom event when we will pick up the item. And to pick up the item, get overlapping actors and from the class filter, select the item BP. It will just return the array of all the item blueprint we are currently overlapping. Then through the array, get a copy and we're gonna call this custom event when we will press the E key. So let's call fill slot and for the item reference, connect it to the get pin. when we press the E key, we are gonna call this fill slot event, and this is where we are going to write all the logic about filling the item into the inventory slot. But before that, we have to write the code to show the inventory UI to a player. So let's say when we press the tab key, we are going to show the inventory UI. So from here, get the inventory UI reference and search for set visibility node. Set it for visible for now. So here what we want is, when we press the tab key, we want the inventory UI to be visible, and the second time we'll press the tab key, we wanna hide the UI again. And for that, we are gonna use flip-flop here, which just switch between A and B again and again. After that, get the player controller and search for the set input mode game and UI, and we're gonna do it when the UI is visible. And then through the player controller, search for set show mouse cursor and check this boolean so that your mouse cursor will be visible when the UI is also visible. And when the UI is hidden again, get the player controller and set input mode to game only, and then set show mouse cursor and remain this boolean unchecked so that the mouse cursor will be hidden again. So we are done with the showing and hiding the UI logic, and here for the confirmation, let's print a string to confirm if this custom event is being called. So here let's go near an item, let's press E, and you can see the message is being printing. And when we press the tab key, here you can see the inventory UI shown up. So it's working all good for now. So let's remove this message from here, and let's actually write the logic to fill the item into our inventory. So first, from this item reference parameter, get the item details variable, which is right here in the item BP, and then get the inventory slot and search for the for each loop with break. So what we are trying to do here is, so we are going to go through all the slots in our inventory till the last slot until we find a slot that is either empty or already has the same item that our character has picked up. So it will just increase the quantity number. So here let's break the inventory struct, and here let's uncheck the unnecessary attributes that we don't need here except the name and the empty boolean. So here first let's check if the name is exactly equals to the item we have just picked up. So we can get the picked up item name from the item details. We just need to break it, and here we have these item attributes. So connect the pin here and check the condition. But there can be another condition here. So for that, let's use the OR operator, and the another condition is if the slot is empty. So if any of these condition is true, we can stop iterating through the slots and fill the item at that specific slot. So get a branch here, and if any of the condition is true, then just break the loop. Now on loop completed, get a branch, and from the inventory slot, search for get a reference and connect the array index here, and it will give us the reference of the inventory slot where the loop has stopped. And the loop will go like this, and let's say it stops at the very first slot cause maybe it's empty, so its index number will be 0. Its next slot's index number will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So we get the slot detail through the index number. So let's break this to get all the attributes and uncheck all the unnecessary attributes that we don't want except the empty boolean, because we're gonna check if the slot is empty or not. Now why we are checking this again? Because here we are breaking this loop because either the name was same as the item we picked up or the slot was empty. But down there we don't know which exact condition was true. So we are just reconfirming it again. So if the slot is empty, that means the slot's image and the quantity border are not visible yet. So we need to make them visible first, specifically in this empty condition. But to access these components, we first need to get the reference of the slot. And to get the reference to the inventory slot, in the inventory UI, if you remember, we made this function to get the reference to the slot by the given index. So here, get the inventory UI and get that function, which is get slot at index. And for the index, we are going to use the array index from the loop, and we get the slot reference as the output. And then through the slot, you can get the item image and the border. If it doesn't show up, make sure to check this is variable option from here. Then you will be able to search it. Then get the set visibility node, connect the pins, and set visibility to not hit testable. It just means making it visible but not clickable. And if you remember, in the inventory button UI, we have this slot number integer. So we also need to keep this updated. So here from the slot, you can set slot number, and the slot number is going to be the array index from the loop. And if you're thinking why do we even need this variable, well, we're gonna use this when we'll drop the item out of the inventory. Now we also need to update the inventory slot variable. So from here, search for set member, which is for updating the variables inside of the structure. So here just check all of the variables. So in the inventory slot, the item name is going to be the item we have just picked up. So get its name from here. Also set it to not empty anymore, and then for the quantity, from here get the quantity attribute, and we are going to add the current quantity with 1. Now for the image, you can get it from the picked up item details. And for the class, from the item reference, you can get the class and connect the pin here. Now we need to set the item image in the slot. So for that, from the item image, search for set brush from texture, then break this updated inventory struct and connect the image to the texture parameter. Now we also need to change this quantity text to the new quantity number. So get the quantity text from here and then through that search for set text and then connect the updated quantity with this text parameter. Now coming down here, what if this condition is false? Means the slot is not empty. So here we are going to get one more branch. So here we know if the slot is not empty, the other possibility is that slot item name is equals to the pickup item name. So get this exactly equals to operator and here add the name parameter, connect it to the operator and compare it with the pickup item name. So if this is true, we are just going to plug this in here directly and we are going to skip these two things. That is making image and quantity visible and updating slot number because we don't need to do this again once the slot is filled and not empty. But what if this condition is also false? That just means the inventory is full. And here do not forget to destroy the actor, that is the item you picked up. And that is it, this should pick up your item into your inventory. So now let's test this. So let's go near the items and press E. Here you can see I can pick up the item into the inventory and it's also updating its quantity. Let's pick up another item and you can see a different slot is allotted to this item and the quantity count is also working all fine. And if I go to other items, they all will be allotted different slots and the same item goes into the same slot and just increase the quantity number. So this was the part 1 of creating inventory system and do not forget to check out my Patreon where you can access all my project files I ever made for these tutorial videos. The link is in the description and you can also join my Discord server where you can interact with other developers. And I wanna thank the Patreon members of this month. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot. So the part 2 will be coming soon. Till then, see you. Bye bye.